Okay, so I have a couple of notes here to help me get through this overview of my five-layer bioecological model for who we are and how we learn. What I have to introduce is essentially a comprehensive framework that's designed to deepen our understanding as educators of who we are and how we learn collectively by exploring various influences on behavior, identity, learning processes. In a school setting, this model can help us as educators to clarify how individual and collective traits, values, and cultural norms shape our educational experiences and outcomes. So I want to quickly break it down layer by layer. To start, I want to quickly take a second and just present the model itself, because something that's really important about this model is that any one layer taken out of the context of the model itself devalues that layer to a significant degree. I would recommend working with 2 to 3 layers at a time to sort of emphasize how important it is to recognize that the influence of, let's say, core values will influence the elements of culture equal to how the elements of culture may be influencing core values, and understanding how that interplay impacts social and emotional character development, hopefully will allow us to reflect on how we're approaching creating a shared understanding of values, to reflect on the kind of culture we're trying to create in ways that guide how we develop the social and emotional competencies we need for the kind of character development we're trying to develop in both our staff and our students to support the communities we serve. So, with that in mind, this outermost layer has to do with 7 elements of culture. This layer, it examines cultural influences, including norms and traditions, relational power dynamics, how resources are distributed, how our philosophical perspectives shape the rationales for all of these other elements of culture. And in a school setting, understanding these cultural dynamics helps us to reflect on how broader societal expectations may be shaping our classroom behavior and learning environments. So, by identifying these influences, we can consciously, intentionally develop a positive, inclusive culture aligned with desired outcomes rather than allowing the more unconscious or not intentional, but intuitive norms to dominate our efforts in shaping the culture we want. So, with that in mind, we have to consider how this layer is influencing and is influenced by how we perceive certain shared values in a schooling setting. Because these values, as we perceive them, reflect societal and community expectations rather than actual behaviors. Schools often emphasize ideals like respect, responsibility, fairness, and these shape expectations for both students and staff. But what we find is that these particular values often have a wide range of understandings among different students and even among different staff. So, recognizing the gap between perceived values and actual behaviors by creating shared understandings of core values can help us to create more realistic and supportive environments that align ideals with everyday actions. Now, this layer of core values also influences and is influenced by not just elements of culture, but how we understand social and emotional competencies as they apply to character development of staff and students. These are teachable competencies like empathy, emotional self regulation, interpersonal skills. These are malleable things that can influence both perceived values and cultural elements. And the impact of aligning these kinds of this layer, these competencies with values and elements of culture, this plays a critical role in how students learn to foster emotional intelligence and social skills, which are foundational for effective collaboration, conflict resolution in the classroom and across school campuses, and academic resilience. Now, consider how these competencies influence and are influenced by ranges of behaviors. That's where this layer of characteristics and attributes has to do with virtues and vices. This layer examines actual behaviors, including patterns of actions that we want to see that align with the social and emotional competencies as they support the values and elements of culture. And in defining those patterns of desired behaviors, we find that we are defining them as they relate to maladaptive tendencies, which are vices. You can have too much of courageousness or not enough of courageousness, depending on the context and situation within different shared learning environments. So schools can explore how students and staff navigate these challenges, make decisions, and develop the character that supports the school culture they're developing with intention. But these ranges of behaviors are not by themselves developed without an understanding of the core layer of this model, which has to do with personality traits and meta traits. The core layer delves into biological and psychological foundations for behavior. It emphasizes how biochemical systems like dopamine and serotonin regulation can shape these personality traits in us as individuals. And so it's not too far-fetched to consider how our personality traits, as they reflect our biochemical predispositions, often influence or may influence the ranges of characteristics and attributes as behaviors and how we respond to different situations and contexts, and how those ranges of behaviors might mean that the conflict resolution strategies that you are teaching in a more social and emotional broad curriculum might look and sound different. And that's a really important takeaway when you consider that one curriculum taught to a whole classroom of students over several periods of different classrooms of students might not have the same effect because you're you're not accounting for the differences in characteristics and attributes and personalities. And so this model can help us as educators understand who we are, and more importantly, how we learn, because learning is change and it's influenced by the interplay between individual traits, social and emotional skills, values, and elements of culture. This model highlights the importance of addressing each layer interrelatedly to create supportive learning environments. For example, a personalized learning environment might involve understanding traits and behaviors that enable differentiation. It might involve cultural relevance that aligns curriculum and pedagogy with cultural values that fosters engagement. Social and emotional growth that focuses on social and emotional competency and character development to equip students with tools for lifelong learning beyond school. So in a school setting, this model, we can use this to develop a reflective culture that encourages staff, students, and parents alike to reflect on the type of school culture they want to develop with intention. It can help set realistic expectations that aligns our perceived values with actual behaviors and capabilities. And all of this to foster holistic development that prioritizes not only academic success, but also social, emotional growth and character development. So this 5-layer model can create environments that support the whole learner, mind, body, and community, leading to more effective and meaningful education. But it does require that we take the time outside of the to and fro, the hustle and bustle of the everyday classroom environment, to reflect and discuss with each other in the time that we make for these types of activities, to discuss what kind of culture do we have, what kind of culture do we want, and how are we going to get there. So with that, that will end my presentation here, my introduction, and I am grateful for anyone who has made it this far. Please reach out anytime. I would love to work with schools and districts in identifying and measuring school culture and values to get things started.